My father returned from World War One, and his father asked him what he was planning on doing with the rest of his life. And because my dad was not game to tell his father that he wanted to go on the stage, he just said, well, what would you like me to do, Father? As children did in those days. And his father said, the land, son, you'd better go on the land. In 1929, Dad was given his father's motor car to travel north to look for a property. So Dad had a look at Karratha Station and he fell in love with the property. Karratha Station was then stocked with sheep, and sheep was Dad's passion, and so he continued on stocking sheep.
And that was one of the biggest mobs that were brought in, 4,000 sheep in that mob. You can see it's a good season.
My mother and father, they had a whirlwind romance. They had their wedding in Melbourne, and Mum left for Karratha Station, so many thousands of miles away. She and Dad were driving back to the station, and they pulled up at one of the 10 gates that led to the station, and Dad said, okay, this is the front gate. And Mum said she looked east, west, north and south, and all she could see was grass. And she just felt the red dust getting into her veins then, and she said, I just loved it. I was blessed in as much as Mum and Dad were great recorders of history, and Dad always had a camera, hence his record of photos from 1929 of the station. Splendid photos as well, big ones. This is a panorama camera which Dad used to take all the long photographs which are in the collection. When you opened the front, which drops down, you will see that there is a little lens on the end of a bellows, and the object of the exercise was to balance it very carefully and steadily on your tummy, then press the button, because it was then that the lens would come out and go in that sort of sound, and put itself back to bed as it is there. Also, he gave my mother an 8mm little camera. Like a rifle, really, isn't it? In about 1938, I think it was, and she was very, very keen on recording any events, and she often used to say, oh, bother, I didn't have the camera with me, and inevitably missed a lot. There would Mum be looking through this tiny little thing, and this is a very familiar sort of sight, seeing her do that. In 1945, a cyclone wiped out half our property. We had a flock of 30,000 sheep at that stage, and 15,000 of those were lost in one night. Interestingly, the shearers' quarters, which were made of 18-inch thick granite walls and supported with railway irons. The railway irons were bent like hairpins by the wind and tossed like handkerchiefs into the middle of the paddock. The roof came off and the walls crumbled. Dad, he taught me how to drive when I was very young, as soon as I could see underneath the steering wheel, actually, because I could see the road, and we would go around doing little runs together, and he used to pat me on the knee as we drove along, and that was pretty special. In 1952, the British detonated an atomic bomb on the Montebello Islands. When the bomb finally went off, my mum was at home. doing her chores as always, and with her was one of our wonderful Aboriginal girls who was sweeping the veranda, and Mum heard this sort of rumble, and so she looked at Ruby and said, "Do you think that's a thunderstorm coming?" And they both looked at the sky, which was bright blue, and then Ruby said, "No, Missy, no thunderstorm." And then Mum suddenly twigged and then ran inside. She thought about her camera, and so that's when Mum filmed the actual mushroom cloud from the atomic bomb. My father formed the Northern Rehabilitation Committee with Lang Hancock. He wanted to encourage people to live in the north. Dad and Lang were very close friends. His property was on what we call the tableland, which was inland from ours. He used to drive down originally and talk to Dad, and then eventually when he had his plane, we saw him more frequently. During the early 1960s, when Dad's and Lang's dreams were being realised, the population was starting to come to the north in the form of mining and developing Lang's iron ore deposits. The railway went through our property and it effectively cut 2 paddocks in half. Dad could have perhaps made their life difficult, but he wanted to see the development. So he was as cooperative as he could be, at the same time trying to run his stock. Well, with all that activity going on Karratha Station, it was becoming very difficult to run the station with sheep because gates were being left open, people were coming out and shooting the sheep for their barbecues, and which made matters worse was there was no compensation at all for Dad because it's leasehold land. Eventually in 1966, Dad sold the property to Rio. Mum and I were absolutely devastated. But what could he do about it? And he was very philosophical about that. He was just delighted to think that his dream for the north was becoming true.
I'd only just seen this, just so everyone can see. It's actually a plaque which says City of Karratha, Honorary Freeman of the City of Karratha awarded to the late Mr. William Bill Allen Leslie for outstanding service to the community, 10th of April 2015. All the best. Thank you.
That is a great honour which recognises not only the beautiful property he created, but also his vision of populating the north. I have seen a lot of change and have been blessed to be able to revisit Karratha, which I cherish every visit because it's coming back to my home country.
And it's looking out over the bay, over King Bay. All this country land now will be built up, looking out where Karratha would be. That point.
Yes, I know.
Well, the township of Karratha.
Yes.
Rio bulldozed the old homestead down, but no one can take my land away from me, and it doesn't matter about buildings. Those rocks and the country is there. Very special.